I do want to ask what's next. You sort of alluded to it. There will certainly be questions about the bot lane. There really can't be any questions about Bjergsen because he's a part owner of the company. So unless he's going to retire and become an executive, I don't see him donning a Golden Guardians jersey next year or anything like that. So it sounds like Broken Blade and Spica will have the least questions around them. Maybe still some. Bot lane will certainly be in question.
Yes, bot lane.
But
it's bot lane.
Let me ask you, though. Because now you're talking about two established veterans, especially Doublelift, okay? And we're not going to get into any of the personal life here, okay? We're going to put that aside. Look at it strictly professionally with Doublelift, okay? He has earned his position to be able to call his shots. Any team will at least give him a solid conversation because he's who he is. And he has a lot of domestic success. And TSM won the summer split, right? So what does TSM do in this situation? How do you handle that bot lane? You look at Biofrost and you look at Doublelift and you have some hard conversations to have here. But what do you do?
I mean, for one thing is that they're going to Doublelift's biggest rival, the spring split. So I don't think it's like, oh, hey guys, let's run this back with Doublelift in the spring split.
Does he just take it off? Maybe Doublelift takes it off and just stays in Shanghai and it just does the super server for the entire split.
Yeah, just stay in Shanghai for
pull a CLG
half a year
and just stay in Asia for
just stay in Asia. But I do think there's some options. I do think the bottom lane if they're going to change anything in their lineup, I would say that bot lane is almost assuredly going to be changed. After an 0-6 record like this, something has to happen. I mean, it's in traditional sports all the time. If you flame out of a spot this drastically, look at the Clippers. They had one of the biggest, choke jobs in NBA history. Who got the axe? The coach did, Doc Rivers. So we might see coaching changes. We might see infrastructure changes. But I do think the bot lane will see some tinkering. I think with the Australian rule or the Oceania is now North American rule, where now all Oceania residents are now North American residents. They have a youngster named Lost who, he's played in the LCS before. You can now promote the Lost Treats bottom lane if you want to and build around those guys if you think that is something that intrigues you. And there's also a lot of other, young 80 carries that you might want to fancy if you're a TSM. It's an interesting situation. And obviously, Doublelift is Doublelift, and Doublelift is a free agent. He's a free agent. This was supposed to be his swan song year on Team Liquid. Obviously, he left a bit early, went to TSM, and now there's a lot of questions ahead. He did tweet. He did mention that the double elimination bracket in the LCS playoffs did save his career and that was a very, weird message, right? Where it's like, were you going to retire if this was single elimination? You didn't make Worlds. So after this performance, I wonder where Doublelift's head's at, right? Where
absolutely.
If Doublelift wants to go be, a streamer tomorrow, he's going to be one of the biggest streamers on Twitch. He'll average 10 to 20, maybe 30K, viewers. Maybe he can become a XQC where he, diverges from League of Legends, becomes a variety streamer after a while. He's a great personality. He's a great trash talker.
He's already a millionaire. He can make even more millions streaming, right?
Definitely. Is the fire still there? And the fire's still there, right? And this is a crossroads. And, Doublelift has many crossroads in his career, but this is probably one of the toughest ones where...
That's a good point, man. That's a really good point.
He just went 0-6. He just had the worst performance of his entire career. He got destroyed in bottom lane almost every single game. He died in lane recklessly. Did not have any, marquee games, no standout moments. He went 0-6 as the number one seed at World, and this could either inspire him to work his butt off and come back even stronger. I hate that. I hate that so much. Everyone tweets that when they suck, but come back stronger in 2021 and put in the work. Screw spring split. I'll work in spring split. I'm going to have the greatest year of my career. I'm going to dominate the LCS from spring to summer and go back to China. And I'm going to have my redemption story for the ages. Or you have 0-6 and you look at yourself and say, I'm nearing my 30s. I've had an amazing career. I've been here for a decade. I've won 8 domestic titles, won MVPs. I beat IG, the reigning world champions in MSI. I made an international final. I've done it all pretty much except win the big, international championship. And you might say, maybe it's time for me to, yonder off into my, streaming retirement home and go become a millionaire that way. So it's a crossroads for Double Lift. And if it's not TSM, I'm sure he'll find a starting spot. If TSM wants to go a different direction, he'll have no problem getting a starting spot in the LCS if he wants one. So it's a big crossroad. It's a really big offseason for Double Lift. I'm curious what happens because both roads seem quite, possible. I would not be surprised if Double Lift tomorrow said, I'm just going to become a streamer full time, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun. I could also see him just tweeting tomorrow, making a video being like, that was the worst loss of my career. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm going to work every single day to make that this never happens again. I'm going to come back to China next year, and I'm going to make it different. So
see, that's a good point, because if there was ever a time, if that's the route he takes, what you just described there, then Spring Split will matter to him.
Yeah.
Because he'll want to make a statement for himself, right? Like he's going to say, no, I'm going to take this entire year by the throat. I'm sick and tired of being a joke. This happened to me last year. I don't want to fizzle out of groups again. This is ridiculous. And then he's just going to run roughshod over the LCS like he has done many, many times. So, and by the way, believe me, we are trying to get interviews with Double Lift and Bjergsen as well, to be honest, just to talk to them and ask these questions, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to ask them these questions. Oh no, yeah, certainly. I'm speaking on our behalf. We are endeavoring to do this, so believe us, we're trying to.
It's tough.
It's tough. It is very tough.
Especially when they go 0-6.
To no fault.
Yeah.
We are trying. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Double Lift side of things. Let's look at the other players. I think Biofrost is a good question now, because I think that one is less of a. Because we already saw some change there. Biofrost came in and out, and of course, him and Double Lift are good friends. They have a lot of history together. But now, I'm not saying that Biofrost's fate is tied to Double Lift, but I am curious what happens with him. I think the conversation is a little bit more extensive, or the possibilities are more extensive with Biofrost, especially with other teams, simply because he may not have the same cachet as Double Lift does. So, what do you think about Biofrost?
I like Biofrost as a player, and I felt like this could be a tournament where he did extremely well. I mean, he's famous for having great playmaking, standout moments. And in a tournament where we've seen Hillsong and Mickey X and Beryl and Lumao and all these great, Sword Art having all these god tier engages on Bard and Alistair and Leona, he had nothing. I can't remember. He had a few hooks. That's about it on Thresh, but aside from that, I don't remember any great Biofrost moments from this tournament. He had a tournament void of any really highlights, and that's quite sad. And again, it's very similar to Double Lift, where he's also had a very long career, and I do think that he has. I don't think he has the same exit route as Double Lift, where I think Biofrost still wants to play, and I think he still has a lot more to go, where Double Lift, if he wants to retire at any time, could do so. But I don't know if TSM's the place for Bio. I don't know if the Bjergsen Bio Double Lift core should stay together. I think the 2016-2017 version, as we now know, was the peak of that core. That core is kind of not really fit in the 2020 world. We thought that bring the band back together. It's like it's like those high schoolers, right? Where it's like you think about your high school days and how cool it was and how great your old friends were, and you go back and you go back to your old town after working a job for the last 10 years. You go back to your 10-year reunion and like, oh, it's my buddies from high school, and you realize they're all scumbags and they all sucked, and your high school days actually were terrible. And why did you come back here? And I think I don't want to say it's as bad as it is with TSM, but it's like sometimes bringing the band, you want to leave the memories alone. You want to leave the memories back in 2016, 2017, and maybe these three players, even though they're close friends, they work well together in a personal wise, maybe in a competitive international level, maybe it's better off they go their separate ways.
Broken Blade and Spica. Spica, in my personal opinion, I think they're both most likely to stay on this roster as an active member of this roster. Well, Bjergsen we'll get to in a second. Hold on. Hold on. Bjergsen we'll get to in a second, because I do think the possibility exists that he hangs it up. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not making any I haven't spoken with him. I would love to ask him that question though. I honestly would love to ask Bjergsen the question, is this it? Are you thinking of retirement? And I'm not putting words in his mouth, but after what happened here and after what he tweeted saying that this is completely embarrassing and just his mindset and having spoken with him throughout the split and how motivated he seemed and to see this happen and how much he's competed and what position he has with TSM, he's set for life. Okay?
Yep.
He is set for life. We know this. He is also somebody that can stream, just like you said with Double Lift.
Definitely.
I guess we're going to talk about Bjergsen now, but he's somebody that can do whatever he wants in League of Legends, any content, he will be totally fine. I would love to, first of all, I'd love to ask him in a week, let him digest what happened here. And I would love to ask him in a live interview, I'd love to ask him, where is your competitive drive right now? And I'd love to hear what he has to say and then spin off a bunch of questions based off of his answer. Because I wonder, you have to wonder. The question has to exist. It's not just me, it's everyone. You have to ask this question. If you are a curious person by nature, of course the question will come up, Tyler. Of course you're going to wonder. Double Lift and Bjergsen, both. What do you do after that? How do you process this? Do you even have the motivation to go on after something like this? Bjergsen is the one that can't go to another team unless he gives up his ownership, right? Like that is a much more complicated process. He is tied to TSM for life. So what do you do? Do you go to management and you say, we got to clean house? That's it. Like the buck stops with Bjergsen in that regard, right? Because he inherently will have that position of power to be able to go to even Andy or whoever and say, we need to clean house. We have to start from scratch. Give me a bunch of rookies. Give me a bunch of people with high potential. Give me a bot lane that's young, for example. And I want to cultivate that and I want to build that and I want to see where that goes. And maybe that's my last hurrah. But to not ask that question is foolish, in my opinion.
I've never really thought of that. I think that's actually a really good question where I think the Double Lift retirement questions have always been there because he did retire at one point. He did go on that sabbatical a few years ago where he did go become a streamer for a bit and then come back, the same split saying he couldn't sleep at night because he only could think about competing and going to Worlds and the streaming life wasn't for him. And, Double Lift has always felt from that point on, always on the teetering edge of could he go to being a streamer? Could he go to being a pro player? He was always on the edge since that moment where we did see him, kind of open that retirement door. And for Bjergsen, it's always been the thing of, I've never really thought of him retiring, right? Where it's always felt like he is that, top LCS player, consistent, always working hard, one of the most well-respected players in League of Legends, in my opinion, not only in North America, but you see it when you talk to people like BDD and Reckless and European players, and they all have respect and reverence for Bjergsen. Even when his team sucks and even when he doesn't do well, the people still vastly respect him as a player and as a human being. And I've never really thought of it. And it actually is. You're right. He's been playing since 2013 as, a teenager, an anxiety-ridden teenager on the Copenhagen Wolves. And then he gets jettisoned over to Los Angeles and becomes the face of one of the biggest organizations in the world in TSM. And his life just flips on its head. And, 7 years later, he's now a multi-millionaire, part owner. He lives in Los Angeles. His Danish accent's almost entirely gone. Like he's kind of grown into this. He's a man now. When he came to Los Angeles, he's a boy. Now he's a man with a part ownership, and he has so many different options. He has over 1 million Twitter followers. He's one of the most famous players in League of Legends. He could, similar to Double, as we said, he could go become a streamer tomorrow and make even more bank, or he go into the executive business and become a high director at TSM and make even more money. Or he could do whatever he wants in esports, and people will find him a job because he's Bjergsen, and he's one of the most likable, smartest, down-to-earth people you'll ever talk to, and he's a really good person. And I think that's why he is so revered and loved by his peers. And I would hate if this was the last time we saw Bjergsen play, because he did not play well. And as someone who really respects him as a player and as a person, this is not how he needs to. This can't be how he goes out. The Zillion game, him going out on a poor Zillion game, him going out trading in Nexus for a Baron, it's not the way you want to go. And Double Lift, right, where Double Lift did have international glory. He did make the MSI finals. That was big. He beat IG. I was there in Taiwan when he beat IG. that was the equal. You could compare it to either C9 beating Afrika or TL beating IG, the greatest moment in North American League of Legends history. The fans barraging, like this like converging onto the stage after they beat IG, and him doing the post-match interview, and the Taiwanese fans serenading him. He had that moment in the sun. Obviously, the finals, not the greatest story of all time, wasn't Disney-esque, kind of got smashed in like, half an hour, but he still had the moment in the sun. He still had that big international moment where Bjergsen, what marquee moment does he have at Worlds? What marquee moment does he have at MSI? It's not there. It's bare. There's no real prime moment you really think of when you think of Bjergsen at an international Riot event. He won the IEM World Championship in 2015, but no one cares about that. They only care about MSI and Worlds, and I just can't see it, man. I don't want that to happen. And I agree with you that it's there. The possibility is there. Maybe the fire has been a bit, snuffed with this, and he looks at his money and he looks at his career options and says maybe it is time to hang up the old keyboard and mouse. But, man, I don't want it to happen, man.
At the very least, the question should be asked. If I interview Bjergsen,
you should definitely do that.
100% that question's being asked, and it's a very fair question to ask. I'm not saying he's going to do it. I'm saying the question should be asked because it would be on a lot of people's minds. Last thought on this before we move on. Let's quickly touch up on Broken Blade and Spica. So Spica, rookie year. I know that you mentioned already, Tyler, that we shouldn't be, putting a hopeful tone on what TSM
moral victory.
No moral victories. Totally
no more
understand.
Victories.
But of all the 5 players, he's the one that would get another chance, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't. He's one of the youngest players in the league. He showed a great resiliency. He could have easily wilted, especially after having such embarrassing performance in the first 4 games. He fought back on Nulia. That shows a lot of heart. And even when they lost that Baron and in an embarrassing fashion, he still came back. He still came back and they got that 5-man sleep. And I think that shows a lot about him. That he could have easily just kind of quit on the game, kind of trolled, kind of just waited to die. But he had that big failure and he had the heart to come back. So for TSM and Spica, you definitely give him another year. He has the potential to be a game-changing jungler, but it all comes down to the coaching and the scouting, the coaching and the kind of the blossoming of him, because he is a young player, and we could either see him become a MVP-like player like Blabber, where I do think Blabber, even though he had C9 had an explosion, I still think Blabber is one of the best players in North America. I think Spica has the potential to be up there like him, or it could be a situation like Mike Young, right, where Mike Young was a flash in the pan, had an amazing, Rift Rivals tournament, had an amazing, few tournaments, but the blossoming and the working on him and the teaching didn't work out, and that kind of happened on TSM when Mike Young was on TSM after coming from from Phoenix One. So I'm curious of the development of Spica, and I do think he's earned another year, and I want to see Spica if a year from now, because he could be an entirely different player. And if he continues on his trajectory, I think he becomes a really, really good player and one of the best players in North America. But the development has to be there behind him and the support.